Hi everybody, it's David from Doctors of Running, and today we have a juicy head-to-head battle. We have one of the battles that everyone keeps asking about. That's the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 3 and the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 2. Now there are a lot of similarities between the second version and the third version, so we'll go over some of the similarities right now. We'll go over the specifications and then we'll kind of go into the differences. So specifications being first, we've got 38 millimeters of stack in the heel for both of them. I'm pulling this off of the Running Warehouse site. 30 millimeters of stack in the forefoot, so they are both an 8 millimeter drop. They both use the carbon fiber plate. They both use ZoomX midsole. And looking at weight, they did drop a little bit of weight off of the Vaporfly Next Percent 3. So men's size 9, you're looking at 6.5 ounces on the Next Percent 3, and we're looking at 6.9 ounces in the Next Percent 2. Going into some of the basic differences when we take a look at the two shoes. One is the upper. It's a pretty obvious one right off the bat. They are now using the Flyknit that they used previously, but it's a new compound synthetic type Flyknit. It's different than the Flyknits I've used in the past. Not quite as stretchy per se, but it has a little bit more structure to the material. Still really comfortable. So they're moving away from the engineered mesh that you have seen in the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. One thing I noticed about fit is I did feel like the lockdown was pretty darn good in the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 and much more comfortable. The Flyknit material is definitely a little bit softer. It feels a little bit more sock-like. And I also noticed that there's more volume throughout the shoe as well, especially through that forefoot and through the midfoot. So when you lock it down, it comes down, but it just feels a little bit more roomy and a little less congested through that midfoot and the forefoot. So that's actually really appreciated. I used to get a little bit of pressure or pulling almost on the midfoot in the Vaporfly, and I feel like that's not there in the Vaporfly Next Percent 3. So I am happy about that. Other differences that we notice right off of the bat is the outsole patterns. So when we take a look at the outsole patterns, previously they used that rubber compound. It had a little bit of traction on it and kind of had these little like hoof-like grooves. Now we're going to a little bit more of an aggressive outsole there, a little bit more grippy. I did notice that on my forefoot as well when I was running. The rubber in the heel is actually thinner in the Vaporfly Next Percent 3. Supposedly keep weight down and to add traction. I feel like the traction might have been a tiny bit better, but I couldn't say that I noticed a huge difference in the heel right off the bat between traction. I've got 13 miles on this so far. I have done a tempo run in the shoe as far as my personal experience goes. 7-mile tempo, 5:26 average. For me, half marathon pace at the moment, it's probably like 5:15. Marathon pace was right around 5:30. So just a little faster than marathon pace. So we're definitely starting to get into what the shoe is designed for. I felt like it did very well as far as transitions, bounciness, everything like that. So looking at differences between the ride, I did feel like this shoe was a little bit more fluid in its transitions than the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. The Next Percent 2, I always felt like I was almost like wearing heels, where the foam felt a little firmer in the back and I'd kind of slap down onto the forefoot. And then from the forefoot forward, it had that sharp toe spring. I can kind of rock her into that next step. So a lot of that's still there. The plate's still very stiff. The ZoomX is still very bouncy. I just feel like that transition's a little bit cleaned up. Based on the interview with Elliot Heath and Running Warehouse, it did seem like they used the fly plate design from the original Vaporfly. How different or similar that is from the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, I'm not 100% sure on that, but transitions did feel smoother to me throughout. So a lot of good points going towards the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 as far as the update goes for me. One thing too I noticed, and I feel like this is pretty consistent in that interview as well, they said that they shifted the platform here. So when we look at our foot base, the last should be the same. Everything is pretty darn similar as far as that goes, but in the forefoot specifically, they shifted it a couple millimeters medially. So coming inside there to help control that pronation moment through the forefoot and to make the shoe a little bit more stable. I feel like that did get accomplished. They were talking about some convexity through the medial aspect as well. That, I don't know if I noticed that as much as far as adding stability, but it did feel like that forefoot had a little bit more structure to it medially, which I did like. So overall, the transitions are pretty similar. If you liked Vaporfly 2, I'm pretty sure you'll like Vaporfly 3. It's definitely not an overhaul, but those small design tweaks made the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 much more enjoyable for myself, where the Next Percent 2, it just felt a little clunky for me, and there was a couple other shoes I would reach for it. I feel like with the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 changes, this shoots immediately back up to the top of the market, and I think it's comparable with pretty much anything else you can name as far as those top shelf options, whether it be the Saucony Endorphin Elite, the Adidas Adios Pro 3, and anything coming out that we're seeing down the line, the Asics Metaspeed Edge and Sky Plus models. This is definitely going to be a shoe that you're going to see on a lot of people's feet, and I think it's definitely worthy of being there. That's the comparison between the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 2 and the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 3.